You know, if you had asked me a year ago about guns in schools, arming teachers, all these hot button issues that we have all been surfaced because of this, I would have told you, what? What are you talking about? I'm worried about my technology. I'm worried about all the, we're one of the first districts in the state to provide a one-to-one services for our kids as far as a netbook in the hands of all of our kids. So I had all that on my plate, and we were moving forward and making lots of progress there, enhancing our technology, enhancing all the teaching tools that come along with that. And Sandy Hook happened. In Connecticut, that was it's a game changer. It's one of those events. It's a 9/11 for education. And I realized that we'd had incidents like that had occurred in the past, but for some reason, I guess it's just that when you realize the magnitude of 26 people, 20 kindergarten kids, and I'm down there every morning opening up those doors for cars for our parents when they bring their kids to school. I'm down there a lot, letting those kindergarten kids and first graders out to go in our building, and I've got children of my own, and it just shocks the conscience of what has happened here. But then you immediately turn to the point of, I'm the superintendent of this school district, and my job's take care of our kids. And I received a lot of phone calls, a lot of email, and a lot of conversations in town in regard to what are we doing to take care of our kids up there. And in the reality of that is Sandy Hook, that elementary, they had a lot of little nice security measures in place. They had the system where you could buzz in and not have to open the door if you didn't want to, and all those things were in place. And the guy shows up with an assault rifle, an M4 rifle, and shoots his way through that front door and comes right on in. Now, you have to ask yourself, as a superintendent, if that happens right now, because you don't get to pick the time, if that happens right now, that guy's right there, he's shooting that door and he's coming in. What are you going to do, Mr. Superintendent, to take care of your kids? There's nothing I can do. I am a victim. I am totally helpless at that point. All I can do is ball up in the corner and just pray that I'm passed over. Now, I don't think that we would do that. I think that our administrative team is such that, and our teachers are such, that if something of that nature was occurring, I believe my people would act as much like the lady there at Sandy Hook that charged right out, confronted that guy, told him to stop, put it down, confronted him. But the problem was she didn't have anything to back that up. She was not armed. And a lot of people have asked the question about, firearms on campus. Well, they were on the phone calling the police when that occurred. And, obviously it takes time for the police to get there. But they didn't call the police because, they have sirens on their cars or the lights on the cars or the blue uniforms. They were calling them because they knew they're the good guys with the guns. And we got a bad guy with a gun that's killing us, and we got to get a stop put to this. And how do you put that to a stop? How do you cease that action from happening? And you got to have somebody else with firepower to put the guy down. Right. And that is the genesis of this whole movement that we're talking about here. Is it boils back down to not Second Amendment, not teachers with guns, not any of that. It's what do you do when that guy comes in your front door and he's going to kill your kids? What do you do? And you've got to have a way to respond, and you can't wait 1 minute, 3 minutes. You've got to respond within seconds. I knew that if we continue to rely on, maybe the special door locks and this and that, all these little procedures that you think, oh, we're safe, we've got this in place, or, I've heard people suggest metal detectors, and, even if you employed those things, and, think of the logistics of trying to run 500 kids through a metal detector every day, but even if you employed those things, was that going to stop that guy? Was that metal detector going to jump up and stop that guy from coming in that front door? You have to look at it from the realistic standpoint of what do you do? I mean, if people would really stop for a minute and think, what do you do? That guy is standing right there, he's coming into this school, now what? And if you really get down on that level, then I think people will start to see we can't wait. And I don't care if it's our school teachers, if it's our principals, janitors, I don't care if it's resource officers or military, I don't care who it is. At that moment, you want somebody to put a stop to it. And we already have one of our resource officers on campus, and we pay 60% of that salary, and the total salary of a resource officer is somewhere around, $50,000. And the reason for that is, there's salary, there's benefits, there's a lot of other things rolled into that total number. And so if you try to field a force of people that we're like what we're trying to put together, and the reason we're wanting multiple people in each building is, number one, if someone's not there that day, if they're sick, if they're on another campus, if there's business somewhere else in the district that they've got to attend to, that leaves that campus vulnerable. And you don't get to pick the time that guy shows up. So you've got to have somebody there all the time. So we wanted some redundancy built into that. But not only that, it's a tactical advantage to have multiple people in your building able to respond rather than that one person trying to take that guy on. It's very unequal, unfortunately, that if we went through a security guard firm and hired commissioned security guards, we would only be receiving people that have 10 hours of training. Because I went through the program myself, and you receive 10 hours of training to be a commissioned security guard in the state of Arkansas. Now, I'm not belittling that program or saying that that's not adequate training, but in the environment of a school building with children, that is not adequate training. And that's why we chose the route of police training for these individuals. Now, we did not open it up to where they're going to be policing the streets. They didn't need that training. They needed very focused training on active shooter in a building. So they have the very best training in that area. And had we sent people to the academy, the police academy, if we'd hired officers, we're not going to get 20-year veterans coming in here doing, all these people to help with our school and our resource officer program. We would probably have had new recruits that would have to go to the academy. And when those recruits go to the academy, they're going to get good training down there, but they're going to be trained to be street officers, patrol officers. They're not trained for active shooters inside a school building. Our people have received active shooter training from SWAT police officers that train all the time, SWAT officers, and we've received identical training. And those SWAT officers were very complimentary of our group that went through because they're very highly intelligent people, motivated, capable. They're very good at teaching, but they can also be cross-trained to do just as good a job in a crisis. Right. The real start of actually pursuing the security guard program started back at a conference that I was attending where we had multiple legislators on a panel discussion. And I asked the question about, were there plans in the upcoming session to address school security, and specifically, what were the possibilities at looking at possible armed guards or arming school personnel to help provide that protection. And of course, they danced around the question typically. And after all that was over, I had a superintendent friend of mine came up and he showed me a card. And this is the card that he showed me. And I didn't know what he had, and I thought it was a business card. And he said, "Look at this card, David." And I took a good look at it. Well, it's a commissioned security officer card, commissioned through the state of Arkansas. And he said, "David, we've been doing this in our district for 20 years. He said, what that is if you go through and you get this commission, you can have a firearm on your campus." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize there was any avenue at all for us to have firearms on our campus other than through a police officer." He said, "You need to look into that." So we began to look into it. I began to talk to my administrative staff. And then, obviously the board had called me individually about different questions they had about security plans and procedures. And we began to discuss at board meetings different security plans that we were looking at. And we talked about all sorts of different things from it's not really bulletproof glass, or it's a product that you put on kind of like tinning. It doesn't tint the window, and it's not bulletproof, but it definitely slows a bullet down, but what it does is it prevents it from falling out. That's right. So in Sandy Hook's situation, the glass shattered, he walks through. In this instant, you would have to tear that glass out, take a lot of time, a lot of energy to be able to get through that. So we were looking at all these things, and I put together the policy about the armed guards and presented that to the board. And the board liked the policy, liked the thought of it, and they wanted to put that in place. But now, before we actually went that far with it, I went ahead and I had contacted the state police, I had contacted these other superintendents, and looked into, is this really doable? Because I was skeptical, and I was skeptical of the whole process at the very beginning. But after talking with the state police, after talking with the couple other superintendents, after talking with our attorneys, I began to feel very comfortable with it. And so what we did is we went ahead and applied for the license, got the license, because at this point no one's going to be on campus armed. This is all just kind of going through the steps to see, can we get this pulled together, and how's this going to work? And so I selected three other members of my administrative team here, the assistant superintendents and my business manager, and we went through the program. And we were not going through the program to be armed on campus. We were going through the program to see, what is this all about? Is this really viable for our school district? And as we went through the program, you know, they do a lot about the use of force, and they, you know, talk about what kind of legal rights and things that a security guard would have in justifying the use of force and those sort of things. And so there was a lot of legal terms and legal education, so to speak, that we were being educated on what security guards could do, could not do. And so we went through that process, and then the actual firearms training of that portion was really, I mean, it would probably be fine in other settings, but in a school it was not adequate, not for what I wanted. I didn't feel comfortable with that. And I have to admit, you know, I was a shotgun and rifle instructor with the National Rifle Association back in my late teen years and early 20s, and I worked a rifle range for the Boy Scouts, and you know, I've been around firearms all my life, so I'm pretty familiar with the firearm aspect of it, firearms training, you know, and been through a lot of those kind of courses and things. So we wanted to make sure that if we did do this, we've got to put together a really comprehensive program where people are really trained well. And so that's when we began looking at, okay, what's a better source of training, and what would make this program much more solid and really beyond reproach from the public. Because we started looking at the vetting process that you asked about. How are we going to select who's going to be a part of this? What are we going to do to verify to the public that these are quality people? And what we did is our administrative team looked at our staff across our campus, and believe me, we had a large pool of great people to select from. But we didn't need 10 people in each building, 20 people. We had a number that we were looking for, and a smaller number, but enough that we felt there was that redundancy that we talked about in there. And we selected those people, and then we went to them. And we sat down with them and we told them about the plan. And we told them up front that, guys, if you don't want to be a part of this, that is not a problem. We understand. But we just felt like you would be good with this, and we just wanted to present it to you and see if you wanted to pursue this. And those individuals that I went to, because of their commitment, their dedication to our kids up here, they're like, if this can make our campus safer, we're in. What we did is as we were looking at the selection process, I had gone out and found Nighthawk Custom Training Academy, John Hottaway. I'd had him on the campus. We had talked extensively about training, the type of training he offered. I'd watched videos and done some things, and I knew he was the real deal. He had trained law enforcement instructors delivering the instruction. He has a world of knowledge and wealth of knowledge about firearms and you know, the application of it and the training and all that. He's really good. He's a professional. So when we found the company we felt could do it, and we'd talked it through, we'd gone through this process, we'd got our license, I'd gone through the security guard program. We put the policy together, we went to the board and we said, here's the policy, here's what we think we can do, and the board said, let's proceed. So then we went to those individual teachers, we selected and talked to them. Now, keep in mind that this is right towards the end of the year when all this started to come together. And, you know, we had not received the training, we had not gone through it, we had not gone hot with the program. No one was on our campus armed at that time. So we're still at the point that we're looking at, you know, is this really going to work, and is this really what we want to do? But at that point, when the board passed the policy and we had talked to the teachers, we were right at the end of the year. Summer basically was there, and so we went ahead and proceeded through the summer to get this in place. And so as far as the vetting process, our teachers went, and I say teachers, it's all sorts of different employees, but they had the same psychological evaluation that police officers have. They're entered into our drug testing program, our Department of Transportation that we use for our bus drivers, and every one of them said, put me in it if that'll make the public feel better. Every one of them said, psychologically test me, whatever, if that'll make the public feel better. So we did all these things that police officers have to do too. So in a sense, if I'd hired all these new recruits and sent them to the academy, we've done the same thing with these individuals, the exact same thing. We certainly do have a response, and we certainly do think that his opinion is not correct. Now, am I trying to be argumentative with him? Am I being disrespectful to the Attorney General? No. That's not how I want to come across on that. But emphatically, I do want people to understand that we do disagree with that decision. And what folks need to understand is I've been asked, why hadn't you vetted this better? Why didn't you look into the legalities of this program? Well, we did. I mean, our attorney looked at it. We talked and called. I mean, we called the state police who runs the program, Arkansas State Police, and I talked to the people in charge of this program at the state police, and they told me that absolutely we could do this. That we were very upfront about what we were trying to put together, and they said, yes, you can do this. And I believe that they were being very upfront and very open and honest about this. They weren't, they had been doing it for 20 years in Arkansas. So it wasn't something new that they were like, oh, I don't know about this. I mean, they had already been doing this. And so that's why they felt like, they could come out and say, absolutely, you can do this. And so I don't feel like they were being disingenuous with any of this. We certainly weren't being that way. So when we went to that authority, the Arkansas State Police and that licensing board that provides the license that we currently hold and gives the commissions, I mean, they're the state entity that does that. And if they tell you you can do it, I mean, I can't go and ask for an Attorney General's opinion, on everything that we do. And on top of that, I can't ask for the opinion. We have to go through a legislator to do that. But if you've asked your attorneys these questions, and then you go to the state police and they said, yes, you can do it, and then you know that other schools are doing it and hold the license, we felt very good about it. We felt very solid. If the board, in which it is the Arkansas Board of Private Investigators and Private Security Agencies, if that board does not revoke our license, and there is a process that we would go through if they did, there is an appeals process built into the law that we would go through if that occurred. But as long as they don't revoke our license or revoke any of our people's commissions, we're legal, because the law gives the authority to that board to issue these licenses and these commissions. They're the ones with the legal authority, and the Attorney General was very clear that it was not his legal authority, it was his opinion. Right. So certainly we would feel comfortable moving forward. Yes, sir, I certainly do, and I'll tell you why I believe that. I've had numerous phone calls from different representatives and senators around the state that have been very, very supportive of what we're doing, and in talking to them, they're kind of giving me the pulse that they feel from the legislature, and I feel very confident that if this is found to be, if that board does not authorize the license and then it's found to be, indeed not legal, I certainly believe that the legislator will take care of that in the next session. I'll give you our explanation of this, and what's it question is, do we have the authority, or did that licensing board have the authority to give us this license? Right. That's what's at question. Okay, there are two types of guard companies listed in definition in the law. There's a guard company, and then there's the security department of a private business. We don't fall under guard company because their guards go guard other people's property and other people's business. Right. What we're looking at is the security department of a private business, and we believe the reason they use the term private business was to separate that out, that there's a guard business and then there's this private business, this private entity that wants to have a guard service within their company. Right. Okay, but the legislature, I believe, when they crafted this law, that it's very clear that they did not want to misconstrue private business was simply private business. They wanted to open that up so that they put these definitions in the law to expand upon what a security department of a private business was. And when you look at the definition, it means, and I'm reading straight from the law, the security department of any person. If the security department has as its general purpose the protection and security of its own property and grounds, and if it does not offer or provide security services to any other person. Well, that's what we're doing. But it goes on. Instead of just leaving it at any person, it defines person. And this is where I believe they really, if any person wasn't enough, I think they take the definition of person and really open that up so that one would not misconstrue private business with all these other entities that can participate in this security law.
Right.
The person means an individual, a firm, an association, a company, a partnership, a corporation. Then we move to nonprofit organization, an institution, or other similar entity. So there are a lot of different titles listed there. And when you go to the Webster Thesaurus and you look in there and you look at what is an institution, the very first thing, the very first listing in that thesaurus is, under institution, a public entity. Right, and we believe that Dustin McDaniel, in that opinion, no disrespect intended at all, but in his opinion, he took that large umbrella and closed it. And that's not the intent of the law.